The silent Exodus captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the endless stream of starships moving through the galaxy's busiest trade routes. For 15 years, she had called this place home. The massive space station served as the heart of the Galactic Trade Federation, where dozens of species conducted business that kept entire star systems running. Elena had been humanity's chief trade representative here, building relationships and securing deals that benefited everyone involved. Today, she felt like a stranger in her own home. The Federation Council chambers buzzed with voices from 23 different species. Alana sat in her designated seat, the small blue marker reading Terra Representative, seeming smaller than usual. Around her, beings she had worked with for years spoke in heated tones about the human problem that needed solving. Council leader Zixthara, a tall reptilian being with scales that shifted from green to gold when she was agitated, stood at the central podium. Her vertical pupils swept across the room as she addressed the assembly. The translation device in Elena's ear converted Zixthara's hissing speech into crisp English. Fellow council members, we have gathered today to address the growing concern about human expansion in our territories. Their aggressive business practices and rapid colonization efforts pose a threat to the stability our Federation has maintained for centuries. Elena's jaw tightened. Aggressive business practices meant humans were simply better at finding efficient solutions. Rapid colonization meant they were willing to settle on worlds other species considered too difficult or dangerous to inhabit. Delegate Mortak from the crystalline collective chimed in, his voice resonating like wind through crystal. Caves. Humans undercut our mining operations by 40%. They extract resources at rates that seem impossible with their primitive technology. Because we work smarter, not just harder, Elena muttered under her breath, though she knew better than to interrupt the formal proceedings. The Aquatic Federation's representative, Tidesinger Valandra, spoke next. Her words came through water-filled speaking apparatus that created a musical quality to her voice. Human traders flood our markets with goods produced at costs we cannot match. They disrupt traditional economic patterns that have served us well for generations. Elena had heard enough. She pressed the request button on her chair's arm, and a soft chime indicated her desire to speak. Zixthara's eyes found her across the chamber. The chair recognizes Representative Rodriguez of Terra. Elena stood slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. She had learned long ago that showing emotion in these chambers was seen as a weakness by many species present. Honored council members, I have listened to your concerns, and I must respectfully disagree with the characterization of human activities as threatening. She paused, letting her words sink in. When the Vorthan plague devastated 3 systems in the Outer Rim, human medical teams worked around the clock for months to develop treatments. We asked for nothing in return. When the trade routes through the nebula sector became too dangerous due to solar flares, human engineers redesigned the navigation systems that all our ships now use. Again, we shared this technology freely. Zixthara's scales shifted to a deeper gold, indicating annoyance. Representative Rodriguez, no one questions humanity's contributions to the Federation. However, your species' rapid expansion and economic dominance create instability. What you call instability, we call progress, Elena replied. Humans succeed because we adapt quickly and work efficiently. We compete fairly within the rules this council has established. Delegate Mortak's crystalline form flickered with internal light, a sign of agitation among his species. Fair competition should not result in one species dominating entire sectors of trade. Elena felt a familiar frustration building in her chest. These beings wanted the benefits of human innovation and efficiency, but they also wanted to be protected from the consequences of their own resistance to change. Perhaps the solution is not to limit human success, but to learn from it. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Zixthara spoke again, her voice carrying the weight of authority. The Council has already reached its decision. Motion 2387 will now be put to vote. All in favor of implementing trade restrictions on human vessels, limiting human colonization rights, and imposing additional taxation on human goods to level the economic playing field. Elena watched as beings she had considered friends and allies raised their hands, tentacles, claws, and other appendages in support of the motion. The Peaceful Meditation Guild, whom she had helped resolve a territorial dispute just last year. The Nomadic Star Wanderers, whose ships she had personally rescued from pirates in the Void Sector. Even the Tech Synthesis Collective, who had based their latest innovations on human designs. The vote was 21 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 against. Only the young delegate from the recently contacted Harmony Worlds had voted with humanity. Motion 2,387 passes with a clear majority, Zixthara announced. Implementation begins immediately. Human trade vessels will be subject to route restriction protocols. New human colonies will require Federation approval, which will be granted sparingly. Trade taxes on human goods will increase by 60%. Elena remained standing as the other delegates began filing out of the chamber, already discussing among themselves how to divide up the trade routes that would soon be restricted to human vessels. Zixthara approached her, her expression attempting something like sympathy. Elena, I hope you understand this is not personal. The Federation must maintain balance among all member species. Elena looked at the being she had once considered a friend, the reptilian leader who had celebrated with her when they had signed the Mutual Defense Pact 3 years earlier. I understand perfectly, Zixthara. You have made your position very clear. Without another word, Elena walked out of the council chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the corridors of Nexus Station as she made her way to the human diplomatic section. The familiar sounds of her own species, speaking in rapid, efficient tones, should have been comforting. But today they felt like a reminder of everything she was about to lose. Elena's deputy, Commander Marcus Chun, looked up from his workstation as she entered the main office. How did it go? About as expected, Elena replied, settling into her chair. She pulled up her personal communicator and began typing a message she had hoped never to send. Marcus, I need you to send a priority 1 message to all human vessels, stations, and colonies in Federation space. Marcus's expression grew serious. What kind of message? Elena's fingers hesitated over the keypad for just a moment. Then she typed 4 words that would change everything. Protocol silence is active. Marcus's eyes widened. Every human in space knew about protocol silence, though most hoped it would never be used. It was the contingency plan developed decades earlier when humanity first joined the Federation, a recognition that their membership might not be permanent. Elena, are you sure about this? She looked at her deputy, a man who had served alongside her for 8 years, who had helped build the relationships that were about to be severed forever. The Federation has made their choice, Marcus. Now we make ours. The message went out on quantum channels to every human presence in Federation space. Within minutes, acknowledgments began flowing back. Colony administrators, ship captains, trade, station managers, and diplomatic personnel all confirmed receipt of the order. Protocol silence was elegantly simple in its execution. Humans would withdraw from all Federation territories voluntarily, quietly, and completely. No demands, no negotiations. No explanations beyond the bare minimum required by law. They would simply leave. Elena spent the next 72 hours coordinating the largest peaceful evacuation in galactic history. On New Shanghai Colony, 30,000 human settlers began packing their belongings while leaving behind the terraforming equipment that had turned the barren world into a garden. The massive fusion reactors that powered 3 Federation worlds were shut down safely, and their human technicians recalled. Trade ships throughout the galaxy changed course, heading for the borders of Federation space. The efficiency of the withdrawal impressed even Elena herself. Humans had always been good at logistics, but this operation demonstrated their capabilities on a scale that surprised everyone involved. Supply chains that had taken decades to build were dismantled in days. Entire settlements that had existed for generations were evacuated without a single person being left behind. On the 3rd day, Elena stood in her office one last time, looking out at Nexus Station's main hub. The usually bustling commercial district was noticeably quieter. Human businesses had closed their doors, their owners and employees already departed. The technical sections where human engineers had maintained critical systems were empty, their equipment carefully shut down and secured. Commander Chun appeared in her doorway. The last transport is ready to depart. All human personnel have been evacuated from Federation space. Elena nodded, picking up the small bag that contained her personal belongings. 15 years of her life reduced to a single carry-on bag. She had left everything else behind, just like thousands of other humans across the galaxy. As they walked toward the docking bay where the final transport waited, Elena passed the Federation Council chambers one more time. Through the transparent walls, she could see Zixthara in heated discussion with several other delegates. Reptilian leaders' scales were shifting rapidly between colors, indicating extreme agitation. Elena wondered if they were discussing the implications of what was happening. Did they realize that the humans who had just quietly departed were the same ones who maintained the communication networks that kept the Federation connected? Were they aware that human technicians had been responsible for the power systems that kept dozens of worlds habitable? The transport ship lifted off from Nexus Station at exactly 1400 hours, Federation Standard Time. Elena watched through the viewport as the massive station grew smaller behind them. She had spent 15 years of her life there, building bridges between species, facilitating trade that benefited everyone, and helping to maintain the peace that the Federation claimed to value above all else. Now she was leaving, and she was never coming back. The pilot, a young woman named Sarah Kim, spoke without turning from her controls. "Ambassador, where are we heading?" Elena considered the question. Humanity had contingency plans for this scenario, but they had never expected to implement them. Set course for the Kepler sector. We have work to do. As the transport ship jumped to hyperspace, Elena began composing messages to human leaders throughout known space. The Federation had taught them a valuable lesson about the dangers of depending on the goodwill of others. It was time for humanity to chart its own course among the stars. Behind them, on Nexus Station, the first signs of crisis were already beginning to appear. The automated systems that had run flawlessly for years were starting to show error messages. The maintenance schedules that had been followed religiously were no longer being executed. The complex logistics networks that had moved goods efficiently throughout Federation space were grinding to a halt. Zixthara stood in her private office, staring at reports that seemed impossible to believe. In just 3 days, humanity had extracted itself from the Federation so completely that it was as if they had never been there at all, except for the gaping holes they had left behind in systems and services that the other species had taken for granted. The reptilian leaders' scales had settled into a deep, troubled purple. For the first time since the vote, she was beginning to wonder if the Federation had made a terrible mistake. The reckoning 6 months after the human departure, Council leader Zixthara stood in the emergency session chamber, surrounded by the chaos that had become her daily reality. The elegant, orderly meetings of the past had been replaced by desperate arguments and accusations. The Federation was falling apart, and everyone was looking for someone to blame. The power grid on Centauri Prime has failed again, announced Delegate Mortak, his crystalline form flickering with unstable energy patterns. That's the third time this month. Our people are starting to lose faith in the government's ability to maintain basic services. Tide singer Valandra's musical voice carried an edge of panic. Our shipping lanes are backed up for weeks. Without the human logistics networks, we cannot move goods efficiently between systems. My people are facing shortages of essential supplies. Zixthara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of leadership crushing down our scaled shoulders. They vote to restrict human activities had seemed so reasonable 6 months ago. The humans had been too successful, too dominant in key sectors of the galactic economy. The other species needed protection from what they saw as unfair competition. Now she understood that what they had called unfair competition was simply superior efficiency. What is the status of our attempts to restore the communication networks? She asked, though she already knew the answer would be disappointing. Tech synthesis. Collective Representative Unit 7742 responded in its emotionless synthetic voice. We have achieved 17% functionality in the primary communications. Grid. The human-designed quantum relay systems are more complex than our initial analysis suggested. Current estimates for full restoration range from 18 to 37 months. 37 months. Over 3 years to restore what humans had built and maintained as a routine part of their operations. Zixthara's scales shifted to a deep red, the color of shame among her people. The nomadic Star Wanderer's delegate, Captain Vexlara, spoke up from her corner of the chamber. My ships have encountered 17 separate pirate attacks in the last month. The trade routes that were perfectly safe under human patrol are now hunting grounds for criminals. We have our own security forces, protested Delegate Kryn from the Warrior Caste Coalition. Surely we can handle a few pirates. Captain Vexlara's laugh was bitter. Your security forces are designed for large-scale conflicts between civilized species. The humans understood piracy as a law enforcement problem, not a military one. They deployed small, fast ships with crews trained specifically for anti-piracy operations. We're trying to hunt mosquitoes with battle cruisers. The arguing continued for hours, as it had for weeks. Each species blamed the others for the crisis. The Crystalline Collective accused the Aquatic Federation of hoarding resources. The Warrior Caste Coalition demanded military action against the pirates, while the Peaceful Meditation Guild insisted that violence would only make things worse. What none of them could do was solve the fundamental problem. The Federation had been far more dependent on human expertise than anyone had realized. Zixthara called for a recess and retreated to her private office. The reports on her desk painted a picture of systematic collapse. The agricultural worlds that fed billions of Federation citizens were struggling with crop failures because the automated systems that controlled soil composition and weather patterns were breaking down. The mining operations that provided raw materials for technology and construction were operating at 60% capacity because the extraction equipment required maintenance techniques that only human engineers seemed to understand. Most troubling of all were the reports from the Outer Rim territories. Without human medical teams, several worlds were facing health crises that local doctors couldn't handle. The humans had developed treatments for dozens of diseases that affected multiple species, and they had taken that knowledge with them when they left. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Zixthara S-Aid, a young reptilian named Sixterra, appeared on the communication screen. Council Leader, we have received a response from the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Zixthara's scales brightened with hope. 3 weeks earlier, she had sent a formal apology to Earth's government, along with an offer to rescind all the restrictions that had been placed on human activities. The message had been carefully crafted to express regret without admitting fault offering concessions while maintaining the Federation's dignity. "Display the message," she ordered. The screen filled with the image of a middle-aged human woman in a simple blue uniform. Zixthara recognized her as Director Sarah Chun, the head of Earth's diplomatic corps. The human's expression was polite but distant. "Council Leader Zixthara, thank you for your message regarding the Federation's desire to restore previous relationships with humanity. We appreciate the Federation's recognition of the challenges that have arisen since our departure." Zixthara leaned forward, hope building in her chest. "However, humanity has moved beyond the constraints of Federation membership. In the 6 months since our departure, we have established the Independent Human Alliance, encompassing 47 worlds and 17 major space stations. We have developed new trade relationships with species outside Federation space and have found these partnerships to be more mutually beneficial than our previous arrangements." The hope in Zixthara's chest turned to ice. "We wish the Federation well in resolving its current difficulties, but humanity will not be returning to Federation space. We have learned valuable lessons about the importance of self-reliance and the dangers of depending on the approval of others for our success." The message ended with formal diplomatic pleasantries, but the meaning was clear. Humanity was done with the Federation. Zixthara appeared nervous as she delivered the next piece of information. "Council Leader, our intelligence services have prepared a report on human activities since their departure." "Show me." The data that appeared on Zixthara's screen was staggering. In 6 months, humanity had not only established their own confederation, but had also made contact with 12 species that had never been part of the Federation. These new allies were providing resources and technology that made the humans even more independent than they had been before. The report included images of massive construction projects in the void between star systems. Humans were building something unprecedented. Mobile cities the size of small moons, capable of traveling between star systems while maintaining entire populations. They were literally creating their own space, independent of any planetary government or galactic authority. "How is this possible?" Zixthara whispered. Zixthara consulted her datapad. Intelligence analysts believed that humans had been planning for this possibility for decades. They developed contingency plans, identified potential allies, and established hidden supply caches throughout known space. When protocol silence was activated, they didn't just leave Federation space. They implemented a comprehensive strategy for independent survival. Zixthara stared at the images of human mobile cities, marveling at the engineering achievement they represented. These weren't desperate refugee camps or temporary shelters. They were sophisticated, planned communities designed for long-term growth and development. "There's more," Zixthara continued reluctantly. "Several Federation member species have requested permission to establish diplomatic relations with the Independent Human Alliance. The Harmony Worlds have already signed a trade agreement with them. The Peaceful Meditation Guild is considering following suit." The Federation was not just losing the humans. It was losing other member species who saw the success of humanity's independent path. A new message chimed on Zixthara's communicator. This one was from her own planet's government. The message was brief and direct. Public confidence in Federation membership has dropped 37%. Citizens are demanding to know why essential services are failing and whether withdrawal from the Federation should be considered. Zixthara's own people were questioning whether they should follow humanity's example. She walked to the viewport in her office, looking out at the space lanes around Nexus Station. The traffic was noticeably lighter than it had been a year ago. Ships moved more slowly, less efficiently. The smooth coordination that had once characterized Federation space had been replaced by confusion and delay dot in the distance. She could see one of the new patrol ships that had been deployed to replace human anti-piracy vessels. It was massive, heavily armed, and completely inappropriate for its mission. While she watched, it lumbered toward a distress signal, moving with all the grace of a charging beast, trying to catch a butterfly. The human ships had been smaller, faster, and more agile. They had prevented piracy through rapid response and intelligent deployment, not through overwhelming force. Now that they were gone, criminals operated with impunity in areas that had been safe for decades. Her communicator chimed again. This time, it was an emergency signal from the Outer Rim medical crisis. Another colony was reporting an outbreak of the Vorthan plague, the same disease that humans had developed treatments for years earlier. Without access to human medical knowledge, thousands of beings would die. Zixthara made a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. She opened a communication channel to the Independent Human Alliance. The response came within hours, but not from the diplomatic corps. Instead, she found herself speaking with Captain Elena Rodriguez, the former human representative who had witnessed the vote that started this entire crisis. Elena appeared on the screen, wearing a simple jumpsuit with the insignia of the Independent Human Alliance. She looked older than Zixthara remembered, but also more confident. The uncertainty and frustration that had characterized her final months in the Federation had been replaced by calm determination. Council Leader Zixthara, Elena said, her voice professionally neutral. How can I help you? Elena, I want to begin by saying that I was wrong. The Federation made a mistake in restricting human activities. I acted out of fear instead of wisdom. Elena's expression didn't change. I appreciate your honesty, Zixthara. What do you need? The directness of the question caught Zixthara off guard. The humans were no longer interested in diplomatic niceties or face-saving gestures. They wanted to know what she needed and whether they could provide it. The medical crisis in the Outer Rim, Zixthara said. The Vorthan plague has returned, and we don't have the expertise to treat it. Thousands of beings will die without help. Elena was quiet for a moment, consulting something off-screen. We can provide medical supplies and treatment protocols. The information will be transmitted within the hour. Thank you, Zixthara said, feeling both relief and shame. Elena, is there any possibility that humanity might consider rejoining the Federation? We could rescind all the restrictions, provide compensation for the inconvenience. Elena's smile was sad, but not unkind. Zixthara, we've moved beyond the need for Federation membership. We've learned to stand on our own, and we've found partners who value our contributions instead of fearing them. But surely there could be some form of cooperation, We're open to trade relationships and mutual assistance in emergencies like this one, Elena replied. But humanity will never again place itself in a position where our survival depends on the approval of others. The communication ended, leaving Zixthara alone with her thoughts and the weight of her mistakes. Over the following months, the Federation struggled to adapt to its new reality. Some member species chose to leave, following humanity's example and establishing their own independent governments. Others remained, working to rebuild the systems that had been lost. The Independent Human Alliance grew stronger, establishing trade relationships throughout the galaxy and developing technologies that surpassed anything the Federation had achieved. They became known as reliable partners who honored their agreements and helped others without expecting political control in return. Zixthara remained as council leader, working to hold the Federation together while learning hard lessons about the cost of fear and prejudice. She often thought about the vote that had started the crisis, and how different things might have been if the Federation had chosen to learn from human success instead of trying to limit it. In her private moments, she wondered if the galaxy would have been better off if every species had followed humanity's example of self-reliance and mutual cooperation. The Federation had been built on the idea that unity required central control, but the humans had shown that true strength came from voluntary partnerships between equals. The human departure had been quiet, dignified, and complete. Their success afterward was loud, obvious, and undeniable. The Federation had lost more than just another member species. They had lost the opportunity to learn from beings who understood that cooperation was stronger than control, and that respect was more valuable than fear. Now, as Zixthara worked to rebuild what had been lost, she carried with her the knowledge that the greatest mistakes often came from the attempt to limit others' potential instead of embracing it. The humans had taught the galaxy that lesson, not through words or arguments, but through the simple act of walking away and proving that they could thrive without anyone's permission. It was a lesson the Federation would never forget. Asterisk.